official podcast of comicslete.com. My name is Joseph, and thank you for joining us for episode number 4. We are going to be talking about The King of Staten Island, the new Judd Apatow movie. I guess it's not that new anymore. It came out mid-early June. Movie that was going to be in theaters, and then because of the pandemic and movie theaters being closed, was switched to streaming. This is a movie, and this is something we'll talk about in the episode. This is something Angela and I were really excited about. It came out. I didn't make it a point to see it that opening weekend. But she hounded me about it a bit because she knew I would like this, and I think you'll hear in our conversation that she was right. So yeah, I got around to seeing it, and we talked about it here. And yeah, it's an interesting movie. I think if you're familiar with some of Judd Apatow's previous work, you'll see some similarities. I think it comes up in the conversation, but the movie Funny People, I think this movie has a few similarities to that one. Yeah, so that's our topic for today. Content warning up at the top. This movie begins with a scene of someone attempting to commit suicide, and we spent some time talking about that, and how it sets the stage for the rest of the movie. So yeah, so content warning about suicide and suicidal ideation. That is something that comes up during our conversation, and I think you should be aware of that. So you know what you're getting into. But yeah, thank you for being here. This is episode number 4, and we hope that you enjoy.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about The King of Staten Island. I'm just going to quickly read off the Wikipedia blurb here. So, The King of Staten Island is a 2020 American comedy drama film directed by Judd Apatow from a screenplay by Apatow, Pete Davidson, and Dave Cyrus. It stars Davidson, Marissa Tomei, Bill Burr, Belle Powley, Maud Apatow, and Steve Buscemi, and follows a young man who must get his life together after his mother starts dating a new man who, like his deceased father, is a firefighter. So, Joey, initial thoughts.
So I think we maybe talked about it in our last episode, but we can say I think we were both very excited when this movie came out back in June, like when we saw the trailers for it. I think we both generally enjoy Pete Davidson, like find him pretty funny. So yeah, we were excited for it. I think you were maybe a little bit more excited than me.
Yeah.
But after I didn't watch it right away, and it kind of faded from, like the cultural consciousness, right? I was not super keen to see it, and so like starting the movie, I was like I wasn't totally into it, and then it starts with the Kid Cudi song "Just What I Am," which is probably my second or third favorite Kid Cudi song. Yeah, really like, I think one of his best songs. I've listened to that one quite a lot. And so I'm like instantly in. I'm like, oh, okay, it's got a good sound, good soundtrack at least. And then there's this scene, and I think we have a little bit of a different read on this scene, maybe. Right, but so there's a scene of Pete Davidson's character Scott driving to Long Island. He's like going over a bridge, and you just sort of see him close his eyes, you see him put his foot on the accelerator, and then he very narrowly avoids an accident. What was your read on that? And I guess what were you kind of thinking as a way to like start the movie?
I thought he was just like being like just like reckless, and I thought it was just to like introduce him as like somebody who like, because like I feel like a lot of people like wouldn't do that, you know, and I feel like maybe it was just to introduce him as sort of like somebody who maybe just like is different from like other people. Yeah, I didn't really know what to think about it. I didn't really think about it too deeply. I was just like, oh, that was weird, because then like the movie started.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have any thoughts about it.
Okay. So I guess like content warning right here, just because we're gonna be talking about mental health and suicide and um those a little bit around those two topics. I that sort of opening really grabbed me. So like we talked about it in our last episode a little bit when we were talking about Tale for a Time Being. I was talking about my like a couple of years I spent at Madison and how that was just that was a really dark and like bad time in my life those years. And something that happened in the middle of those is during the summer, and you'll remember this, Angela. I injured myself like running. While I was out running, I ran into the back of a car like going down the freeway, and something, and I think I've shared this with you, and like so I don't, I'm that like I remember how I was feeling sort of in the days, the weeks and the days and the like hours leading up to that moment. And because the accident was my fault, because I ran into the back of the car, and I'm to this day, and I don't think I'll ever know if it was something I did on accident because I didn't see it, or if it's something I did on purpose trying to hurt myself. And that scene where he's putting his foot down, his eyes are closed, and then suddenly he like snaps out of it and swerves, right? He comes very close to death in that scene. And as he's driving away, because he doesn't stop to like see, because he causes a car behind him to swerve, and I think they get into a small accident. He doesn't stop to see if people are okay, right? So I think it like sets him up as being selfish. But as he's driving away, like the only thing he can say is "I'm sorry." He just keeps repeating that over and over again, and that's like this extremely vivid memory, right, I have from that time, because I was hit by the car, and then I woke up on the ground, and I'm not sure how long I was out, and like the first thing I said, and the only thing I could like keep repeating, was "I'm sorry." Like I just had this sense, like I just knew like I had done something bad, and I like felt, even though I was like injured, right, like even though I was like injured and in pain, like I was like I knew I had done something bad, and I was feeling sorry about it, and I just like that's the only thing I could keep saying. So that opening scene, like instantly I was like, oh, what's really going on here? Because and not everyone's gonna like respond to that like the same way, because not everyone has that experience, but like just that idea of like maybe wanting to hurt yourself, or like putting yourself in intentionally harmful situation, right? It's like I guess I was like, oh, what is this movie actually doing, right? Because it I think the trailer and like what I know about Pete Davidson, right, it does bill it as a comedy, right? Like that's a huge aspect of this movie. And we should probably get into like what we really liked about it. But I think something we should come back to at the end is like, does this movie hold up to like, right? And if like the question I had, I was like thinking about it after, I was like, did it, so like that is like a very specific and sort of intense opening, but like does the rest of the movie support that, right? Does it like
Yeah.
have anything to say about that? Because like immediately after that scene, right, it goes like it instantly is a very funny movie, right? Like immediately afterwards.
Right. And actually, just to cut in here, so I was actually looking it up, and there are a lot of articles that do confirm that it was. There's like one article from the Big Lead that says that near suicide attempt is the opening scene of The King of Staten Island, and it perfectly sets up the journey the viewer will take into the protagonist's mind. So I think that, yeah, that was right.
Okay. I guess, yeah, so what did you like? Because for that first hour I was laughing hard and often.
Yeah.
What about you?
I really liked it. I really just like Pete Davidson's like style of like sarcastic humor. So like honestly anytime where he was like talking, I was laughing.
Yeah, his sarcasm is so, it like, that's like, I mean, I don't really want to talk about like whether or not he can act, because like I think he's very good in this movie. Like what he's doing works in this movie, but like what he's doing is like mainly he's like being sarcastic. And yeah, for that like first hour when he's talking to his mom and his sister, or he's talking to his friends, or he's, you know, talking to the people at the restaurant where he works, or the firefighters at the baseball game, like he just like no one, even though he like, right, he's, I don't know how old he's in like his 20s, he's not really like going anywhere with his life, but he's just like such a sarcastic asshole, but it's like so funny because you can't like pin him down because he just doesn't take anything that seriously. And you know, like the things I'm gonna remember from this movie, beside that like opening scene, and then the like the like way his sarcasm bounces off the other characters, are the things that I'm really gonna remember. When he's at the restaurant, like trying to, I guess we should maybe set up the plot a little bit before we get in like too many details, because otherwise it'll seem out of context. So he goes back to Long Island. His sister is going to college. Scott doesn't really have anything going on in his life. And then his mom sort of meets this new guy who is a firefighter. And Pete, his mom is a widower. Pete's dad died in a fire. And you know, and the movie's sort of like, right, lightly autobiographical. I guess, do you think it's lightly autobiographical, or right? Because Pete Davidson's dad was actually a firefighter.
Yeah, I think so.
Pardon?
Yeah, because I think so, because it also has like other parallels where like Pete Davidson talks about like living with his mom on Staten Island. Scott lives with his mom on Staten Island. Pete Davidson smokes a lot of weed. So does Scott.
Yeah, so definitely like lightly autobiographical elements. So yeah, so he has this dad that he misses, and then his mom meets a guy who's a firefighter, and they sort of start dating, and Scott does his best to try to break them up because he doesn't think he's good enough for her. You know, so one of those scenes is the mom and the boyfriend come into the restaurant where Scott works, and he's trying to sabotage the food. He goes to like a baseball game with the boyfriend, and he's like telling them why like firefighters shouldn't have kids, and it's like a pretty serious scene actually, but like Scott's sarcasm, because he like talks about his Crohn's, and like that's, you know, it's like a little bit of like gross out humor. His Crohn's disease, which Pete Davidson also has. Yeah, so like I'm definitely gonna remember like those like real, those funny moments when he's like, his sarcasm is bouncing off of other characters. What are you gonna like? What are those moments that stick out to you that you're gonna remember from this movie?
Definitely that restaurant scene where he's like trying to spit in the bread, and his coworker's like, "You gotta be more subtle about it." And then Pete asks if he could fit it up his butthole. I thought that was funny.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like this movie is like is absolutely a comedy for that like first hour, and it's really funny, and it's like moving along pretty quick, and then it kind of like there's this pretty hard switch, right? I think we both identified that there's kind of this switch like halfway through. Where does that switch happen for you?
For me, it was when Pete, his mom, and her boyfriend were driving back from visiting his sister at college. Pete overheard his mom and his boyfriend talking about how like Pete has no direction in life, and then or not Pete, oh my gosh, Scott,
Yeah.
Whatever. Same thing.
Scott and Pete are the same.
Yeah. And then Scott makes that decision to help his friends rob this pharmacy. That was it for me. Whereas it's like, oh, it's serious now.
Yeah. I think the moment I can't remember exactly, but I think the moment it switches for me, I think is the scene after, right? Because I think they get home from that car trip, and Scott wakes up the next day, and it's this weird camera move that doesn't happen anywhere else in the movie, and this is a pretty standard shot movie, right? It's wide shot with lots of lots of people interacting with each other, so like it's the camera's pulled back a little bit, and you're seeing the people talking to each other. But there's this camera shot. Scott wakes up and he's walking down the hallway, and it's like a first person camera, so you're like seeing what he's seeing out of his eyes, and he's sort of jostling, it's jostling as it goes down the hallway, and then they turn left to go into the dining room, and the mom and the boyfriend are sitting there, and that's when together they tell them that he needs to move out of the house, right? And from that moment, right, it becomes a less funny, much more serious movie, and I don't know if that movie worked as well for me. Do you think the like drama works as well as the comedy does?
I don't know. I think that because there was still like some humor just from like Scott's like sarcasm that like I think kind of saved the drama.
Yeah.
Because if there wasn't that, then I think I would have been really bored for the last half of the movie. But like for example, like when Scott's cleaning the fire truck when he goes into the firehouse, and he's like, "Why do I have to clean this? It's just gonna get fire on it." Like I thought that was pretty funny, and just like little parts like that, I think made the drama part less like boring for me.
Okay, yeah, because yes, like the way Pete Davidson doesn't like suddenly become a more serious actor. I think he's like pretty much doing the same thing throughout the whole movie. It's just sort of what's happening around him, right? Because you mentioned there's a point when his friends, who are also going nowhere, right? They're similar age, like late 20s, dealing like drugs or doing whatever. I don't know if they all deal drugs. One of them deals drugs on Staten Island, but they ask him to rob a pharmacy with them. I think that is towards like the end of the first half of the movie. It might be at the beginning of the second half, but they're not really in the second half of the movie
because they're in jail.
Yeah, because they're in jail. His sister doesn't really show up, and they have like a pretty good back and forth. His mom isn't really in the second half of the movie. She shows up at the end, but that second half of the movie is him interacting with the mom's boyfriend and the firefighters at the firehouse. And that's where you have like Steve Buscemi and and a lot of Bill Burr and like funny people, but just it is a much more it is just much more serious for some reason, and I don't even think it had to be that serious in order to sort of get in order for like the plot of the movie to get where it's going, right? Because at the end there is sort of this reconciliation between the mom and Scott and the boyfriend, but I don't think the sort of like comedy of the movie had to go away in order for that to occur. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I agree, especially because like when we like think about the end of the movie, I don't really think that like Scott is like all that changed from the start of the movie.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Right, so I think that kind of goes back to the acting thing. Like it works, but because the like acting doesn't really change, like he is just kind of still the same person. I think what you see, the like thing that does change is like he demonstrates that he cares about other people a little bit more. Right, because you have this final scene where Scott is at the firehouse and this guy rolls up who's been stabbed. That person's played by Action Bronson. He's been stabbed and he doesn't want to go to the hospital, right? So Scott's like doesn't know what to do. And then Bill Burr's character comes up and sort of together they convince him to go to the hospital. And he at the hospital, because his mom is a nurse there, at the hospital, the mom sees him working, like getting along with the boyfriend and sort of trying to take care of another person. And then sort of, she kind of lets him back into his life. And it's supposed to be this big moment where he's like, oh, I care about things now, or like I care about other people, right? And he, yeah, and there's sort of a reconciliation with a girl that he was kind of seeing at the beginning of the movie that he sort of didn't want to commit to, and he kind of tells her that he's ready to like commit to her. But it just there isn't, the movie got more serious, and I think we're supposed to like infer that like change is happening, but it's, if you're sort of thinking about, well, what is this person doing that like demonstrates it, I struggle to like come up with like good evidence,
right?
That's
especially
something.
Yeah, especially because it's just like career wise, I still don't see him going anywhere, at least not that was like shown in the movie, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And that's probably one of that I guess I think that's probably one of the funnier things in the movie, right? The restaurant that
Ruby Tat Tuesdays.
Yeah, Scott wants to open a restaurant where you get tattooed, called Ruby Tat Tuesday, which I think is a great joke. Like, it's a really good joke. I laughed really hard at that. But how does that work? I guess when I was thinking about it, I was thinking you're getting tattooed while you're eating. But as someone who's never gotten a tattoo, I don't know if that works.
As someone who has gotten a tattoo, that would be kind of hard, especially like that really limits on your body where you could get the tattoo if you like need to use your like arms and your hands to like eat,
Yeah, I guess like arms might be mostly off the table. I guess it would like almost have to be your like back, right? Like,
right.
But yeah, so he wants to open this restaurant, and like more broadly, he wants to become a tattoo artist. And they like show him working on it throughout the movie, and like you see some of his drawings. But even that isn't like a huge part of what he's doing, right? And even when he's supposed to be like being more serious about like wanting to do something, right? It's not like you see all this like art or like all this stuff he's doing to like practice, right? The movie isn't like, I guess it's just not interested in showing that for whatever reason. But yeah, what I think that's like mostly the plot. And then kind of the ending, right? So the ending is I guess I appreciate the ending it a bit for right. He goes to like reconnect with this girl. They go to downtown Manhattan where she's gonna take her civil service test, and he's gonna wait for her. And so he like walks out of the building into lower Manhattan, and the Kid Cudi song "Pursuit of Happiness" plays, which is maybe his best song. But it's right. So it's like this very hopeful, upbeat note, at least, that I appreciate the musical cue. I don't know if I like have a ton of hope for Scott, but the music is nice at the very least. Going back to that question that we kind of started with, like, the movie starts on this very serious note. It's kind of semi-autobiographical, right? Like, as far as like Pete Davidson losing his father, he's talked publicly about his Crohn's disease, about his like mental health issues. In this movie, Scott talks to other characters about his mental health issues. Do you think the movie supports the weight of that topic, or like has anything valuable or new or important to say about that, or what, like, yeah, what's your read on that?
I don't know. I don't think it really like obviously like, it didn't really go like in depth about like his mental health. There's really only like that one scene where it's like we understand that like Scott misses his dad a lot, and then there's that one scene with his mom where he's like, I miss him. And then like that's all we get really, I feel like, in terms of like him like and like emotional growth or like anything with like coping.
There's that scene you brought up when he's talking to Kelsey at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what go on about that?
Yeah, so that's for Kelsey. It's the girl that he's sleeping with but doesn't want to commit to. And Kelsey's like, why can't we be together? And then Scott's like, because like I'm like messed up, or it's like I get mad and I don't know why, or that's like, and I don't want to like hurt you, and because like he's like, I'm not like good right now. So I think like it was like really interesting way of sort of like him explaining how like he is, like how his mental health is. But I don't really think that they took it much further than that.
Yeah. And I think that scene with Kelsey is, I think that is like I think that is an interesting scene, right? Because I think it gets at that thing where like mental health issues, whether it's like depression or anxiety or suicidal ideation or whatever the thing is that a person's dealing with, it's not always something that can be like diagnosed and treated, right? Sometimes it's a thing that you right? It's not every day, but you wake up today and you're like, like that is what you're dealing with today, right? It's like, it's so, it can be like, right? It is that thing it's something that can be so nebulous and abstract. And I think his description in that scene of it is like really good, right? Where he's just like, I'm not good right now and I don't trust myself. But I guess, and I guess maybe this would be unfair to suggest. I don't think the movie suggests that by the end he's fixed in any way. I don't think it suggests that like he's figured anything out. Do you agree with that, or do you?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, yeah, which is good, right? But like, I also think it just kind of drops that issue almost entirely, because I can't remember a scene with like the firefighters, right? I think he talks to his mom about missing his dad, but I don't think he ever has another conversation with someone where he's like ever tells someone what they're feeling again. Or I think for the most part that issue or that struggle of his is just kind of dropped, and you don't ever see any like more work towards sort of coming to terms with or dealing with that in any way, that dealing with it in any, however, right, that looks different for every person, but like however he's going to deal with it, whatever that work looks like for him. I don't actually think we ever see that, right? And then it just ends on this vaguely positive note that doesn't suggest everything's fine, but just that issue's kind of gone, right? I don't even think we're thinking about it anymore for a movie that's so about that at the beginning. Yeah. Yeah. I would still say people should go watch it though. I enjoyed it. I think that first hour is really good. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I would also recommend that people watch it. I mean, like I was saying before, it's like I don't think that you're gonna come away with any new like understanding of the meaning of life or anything.
No,
but like
no.
it's entertaining.
No.
It's like it'll make you laugh.
Yeah. And I guess I don't think it's trying to do that. I guess,
Yeah.
right, if you like Pete Davidson, right, you've probably already seen it. And if you like him and you haven't, I think this is a good movie. Judd Apatow directed it, and I think it sort of has some of the issues that like a movie like for Funny People has, where it starts off as something very funny and becomes about something serious at the end, and that back half really slows down. But yeah, if you like Pete Davidson, I think it's like, if you're there for his type of comedy, I think it's totally worth watching. Yeah, anything else to say, or should we move on to the end of this show?
I don't really have anything. Oh, I mean, if you want to watch the movie, you can find it where? Amazon Prime,
iTunes Store, Apple TV. Yeah, it's not streaming for free anywhere. I gotta pay for it. Or if you know how to find movies without paying for it, you don't have to pay for it. But we can't condone that. You just make sure you use a VPN or whatever. But all right, we'll move on to the end of the show. We're gonna be back after a short break.
Bye. Okay, so we're back and we're just going to share some things that have been interesting for us. Joey, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, have you heard of the game Among Us?
Yeah, it's on TikTok.
It is?
Yeah.
How does it show up on TikTok?
It's like people are like playing it, or like people are making like real life. They're like arranging it somehow, like doing it in real life, like with costumes and like tasks.
Wild. Wait, so what do you think this game is? What is your understanding of this game?
You're like an astronaut dude with a bunch of other different colored astronaut dudes, and then one person is an imposter, and then the imposter can kill people. And I'm assuming that people want to figure out who the imposter is. Yeah. And there's like tasks and stuff. I haven't played it. Calvin plays it sometimes.
Nice. We should play it together. Would you want to? If you want to play it, we can play it together.
I'm open to trying, yeah.
Yeah, so you nailed it, right? You're on a spaceship, and like the theory is that there's like a shape-changing alien who's an imposter who will, kill you or your other space crew members when you're all running around. And you have tasks to do. Every time someone finds a dead body, or if someone suspects they know who the imposter is, they can call a meeting, and then during the meetings you can choose to skip the vote, or if you think you know who the imposter is, you choose to vote and kick that person out of the spaceship. And I've only played once randomly, and I stopped. I didn't play it like you, because you could just join random public games, and I didn't do that again because I was just running around, but I wasn't by anyone else. So maybe because what I know happens is people will get in, but it kind of works best with like 8 to 10 people. So they'll like get a random in to fill out their game. So maybe I joined a game where they were all like they knew each other and were working together and they didn't know who I was. So I was the first one, the first public game I joined, I was the first one kicked out and I was like, I'm not dealing with this. Um, but I've played again with some people from work. We played 2 weeks ago. We spent like 2 hours doing it. We only had 5 people, so we only had one imposter, and you could kind of figure out after like the first meeting, you were able to kind of like it only generally took one meeting to figure out who the imposter was. Um, but it was just like fun, goofy nonsense, right? It's like a good game. I think it's best if you don't have to like know everyone perfectly, but I think it's a good game if you have some if you're at least familiar with the people you're playing with. Um, and it just, it gets you like you have to kind of if you're the imposter, you kind of have to like put on a role, right? In those conversations where you're trying to convince people that you're not the imposter and um yeah, so I think it's just it's good at like getting people out of their comfort zones and just sort of thinking about things a different way.
Hmm.
Um, I played with a couple people who just they don't really play video games, and that's one thing I really like it about is it's a video game, right? But it's like very approachable even if you don't understand like if you're not just like right when you play video games for a bit, you just kind of understand the rules, right? Even if you come to a new game, you're just kind of like you're able to pick up the rules pretty quickly. Um, and I think Among Us just because it is a simple game, right? It can get like the complexity is in the human interaction, not in what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I guess I would be interested to like know if like people play this game and are suddenly like, oh, what are like other video games, right? Or like maybe video games are a thing I'm gonna like try, right? Because I guess I don't think like the jump from like Among Us to maybe something like Animal Crossing is like super, maybe it's like an entry point to a game like that where,
Maybe Animal Crossing was the jump to Among Us because remember
oh,
when Animal Crossing was super popular?
Animal Crossing was the like biggest thing ever in
And
like
people were buying
March,
Nintendo
right?
Switches just to play Animal
Yeah.
Crossing.
Yeah. You know what? I think that maybe so I don't think it's on Switch. It is on phones, right? It's on Google Play
Phone and
Store.
computer, yeah.
Yeah, it's on Google Play Store and the App Store. And those apps are free. You have to pay, it's like $5 if you buy it on Steam, or from itch.io. But yeah. So yeah, I think maybe that's a good point, right? Like quarantine, people played Animal Crossing or they found something else and suddenly like games are uh they're just like looking out for new games maybe. Have you heard of Fall Guys?
No.
No, that one okay. Because that was like pretty big, but maybe that is still just that sort of limited to people who are really into games. That's interesting. I always find it interesting like what games cross over into like right because there's like people who pay attention to games like me
Yeah.
and like what sort of crosses over from games to like
Mainstream.
people who to mainstream like people who don't pay attention to
Yeah.
games, right? So it's so was Animal Crossing showing up on
Yes,
TikTok when yeah,
definitely.
okay, all right. I think that's probably a pretty good measure of what has crossed over,
Hmm.
right? What the TikTok memes and stuff are. Okay, that's interesting. Nice. All right. What's making you happy, Ange?
um, Korean dramas and Chinese dramas. I watched a lot of both when I came home in March. And then I kind of stopped watching them for a little bit when school started because I knew that if I started a new drama, I would not get any work done. But then I started a new drama. So I would recommend watching Itaewon Class. It's a Korean drama. It's on Netflix. Um, or if you want a Chinese drama, I really like A Love So Beautiful or Meteor Garden. I think that I tried to get when you and Darian were here for when you were in quarantine with us. I tried to get Darian to watch a K drama Crash Landing on You, which is also really good. I don't think she was that interested, but maybe somebody else who's listening would be interested. Um, but yeah, I'm just like I really like them. My only thing is the episodes for both Korean and Chinese dramas are like an hour max, like or more long, so it is like a time commitment. Um, but I
How
would
many episodes?
definitely
How
watch
many
them.
episodes?
Well, let's see. Meteor Garden, which is a Chinese drama, had about 42 episodes.
One season, or is that like 4 seasons?
It's like listed as one season on
Oh,
Netflix,
wow. Okay.
but Crash Landing on You had, or no, 8 to 1 Class had like 16.
Episodes?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is like it's just like watching like 16 movies.
Okay. Okay. Is
Yeah,
it something that you're putting on and paying like close attention to, or is it something that goes on and you can like be on your phone or your computer, or how?
I mean, because it is like in a different language, so you
Oh,
have
it's
to
some.
pay a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I really like It to One Class though, because I really like the music. I watched it because I would see TikTok videos on it because I guess that's how I get all my news now is through TikTok, through my For You page. But I would see like TikTok videos about it, and they'd have the soundtrack in the background, and like that's why I listened to it or watched it, and it was really good. So yeah,
Okay. Nice. All right. I think that brings us to the end. We will be back next week. We're gonna be watching, if you want to watch along with us, we're gonna be watching the movie My Neighbor Totoro. It's a Studio Ghibli movie. I think we're gonna try to do a couple Studio Ghibli movies, sort of spread out, right? We're gonna watch My Neighbor Totoro, probably do a couple we have a couple episodes on some other stuff, and then we'll come back with another one. I think this is we're gonna spread out and watch like 4 or 5 over the next like 2 or 3 months, is the plan. Because I haven't seen any Studio Ghibli movies. Have you watched a couple? Am I right?
I watched Spirited Away and Secret Life of Ariete.
Okay, all right. So you're a little bit familiar. I'm totally unfamiliar, but we'll be back with that. Those are on, they're all on HBO Max. They might also be on the internet somewhere if you know how to
I
do
think they're
that.
also on yeah. I think they're also on Amazon Prime,
Oh, okay.
but I'm not sure if it's like the Japanese version.
Okay. Oh, I haven't even looked into that.
I know that HBO Max has the Japanese version.
So with subtitles then.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Because I
All
tried to put it on when I was home with our parents, and they were just like, "No, we don't want to read."
right. Okay. Yeah, we'll be back. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.